Good morning. Good morning and welcome to our worship service at Central Unitarian Church. My name is Josef Machac. My wife and I first came to CUC 35 years ago at the invitation of our friends and neighbors who were already long-time CUC members. We have been coming to CUC regularly since then, along with our daughters who grew up in our RE program and continue to consider themselves as Unitarian Universalist. My wife and I continue to be deeply involved in multiple CUC activities. Besides being a worship associate and helping make coffee from time to time, I'm involved in our ongoing partnership with the Unitarian congregation in Prague in the Czech Republic. So again, welcome newcomers, members, and friends to our worship service at Central Unitarian Church. CUC is an inclusive community of all ages, which embraces diversity and identity, expression, and spiritual belief. We gather each Sunday in worship to find inspiration, hope, and renewal among this community of like-hearted individuals. If you are visiting us in person, please be sure to say hello to one of our welcome hosts. And our hosts today are Mia Howard and Denise Adams, if you can wave your hands. So please say hello to them. If you are visiting us online, please be sure to click the link provided in the chat and sign our guest book by providing us with your name and contact information. We invite you to stay after service for coffee, conversation, and connection in the same space. And we appreciate those who prepared coffee as well as bagels and other treats for us today. As we prepare to begin our service this morning, we ask those in person to please turn off all your electronic devices, with the exception of electronic pacemakers or other bioelectronic implants. I would like to bring to your attention some announcements. The CUC Choir is hosting Coffee Hour today. We thank you for that, but also thank you for performing for us today, and I'm sure we'll enjoy the offering. CUC member Alex Barbieri is hosting the Marsha P. Johnson Social this coming Wednesday. The Women's Club is hosting an event here tomorrow. If you can and are able, please help put the chairs in the racks after the service today so we can leave the space empty. In addition to that, I would like to bring to your attention that tomorrow there will be a celebration of Martin Luther King's birthday, starting at 6:30 at Temple Emmet. This is a remarkable event sponsored and organized by multiple religious as well as secular organizations in Bergen County. So please, if you are able, please come, because this is an extraordinary event every year. And now, let us more formally begin our gathering. Please turn to a person near you and offer them a warm welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Today's opening words are by the late Czech statesman, author, poet, playwright, and dissident Václav Havel, who was an activist for democracy and a winner of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It is I who must begin. Once I begin, once I try, here and now, right where I am, not excusing myself, but by saying that things would be easier elsewhere, without grand speeches and ostentatious gestures, but all the more persistently, to live in harmony with the voice of being as I understand it within myself. As soon as I begin that, I suddenly discover, to my surprise, that I am neither the only one, nor the first, nor the most important one to have set out upon that road. Whether all is really lost or not depends entirely on whether or not I am lost. And now we'll stand in body or in spirit for our opening hymn.
While our chalice is lit by Reverend Cutolo, please join me in reciting our chalice lighting words, which are based on CUC's vision statement. We light this chalice to remind us of our dreams, to nourish our heart, mind, and spirit, to work towards a better world for all, to embrace the whole of our human experience, to honor our past and our gifts of the present, to create a community where each of us may find healing, transformation, and hope. We are not alone. Our lives are built on shared commitments, giving and receiving together. Our congregation serves as a place where we intentionally practice this shared living, interdependence in a culture that overemphasizes independence. One of the ways we practice our interdependence is through our congregation's finances, which depend on the generous contributions of members and friends. We pause each week to recognize this particular form of sharing, each of us giving what we can to support the mission and vision of Central Unitarian Church. Your financial contribution helps each and every one of us to grow, to serve, and most importantly, to live lives centered on love. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Please join me in saying our dedication words based on CUC's mission statement. We dedicate these gifts in service of our mission to welcome all into a home of spiritual diversity that challenges us to become our best selves, to minister to one another in love, and to serve the greater community.
We now pause to take a moment to share our joys and concerns. We do this each week as a way of caring for one another. We invite you to share the joys and sorrows you hold in your heart today. If you're online, you may do so by entering that information in the chat box. Those of you here in person may have already lit a candle and submitted a joy or sorrow, which I will read in a moment. We will also offer a moment for those here to share out loud the names of those you are holding in your heart today. So now let us quiet ourselves in order to enter that holy space of listening and of breathing in a breath of life and breathing out a breath of peace. We hold all of these cares, joys, and concerns in our hearts, as well as the ones that remain unspoken. And now, would you please join me in a moment of prayer? God, grant that ministers and lay leaders and civic leaders and professional people all over the nation will rise up and use the talents and the finances that God has given them and lead the people on toward the promised land of freedom with rational, calm, nonviolent means. And together, let the church say, Amen.
Amen.
And now I invite everyone who's gathered here in person to stand in body or in spirit for our second hymn.
Today's reading is by the late Unitarian Universalist minister Marjorie Bowens Wheatley, entitled A Litany of Restoration. If we can all turn to the responsive reading number 576 in your UU hymnal, and we will read it together responsively. If, recognizing the interdependence of all life, we strive to build community, the strength we gather will be our salvation. If you are black and I am white, it will not matter. If you are female and I am male, it will not matter. If you are older and I am younger, it will not matter. If you are progressive and I am conservative, it will not matter. If you are straight and I am gay, it will not matter. If you are Christian and I am Jewish, it will not matter. If we join spirits as brothers and sisters, The pain of our aloneness will be lessened, and that does matter. In this spirit, we build community and move towards restoration. Here ends the reading.
Tomorrow, our country will pause to commemorate two significant national observances. We'll honor Martin Luther King Jr. Day, celebrating a legendary 20th century minister and civil rights activist whose mission was to extend the universal human struggle for freedom and justice to all Americans, regardless of color. We'll also mark Inauguration Day, a solemn occasion signifying the peaceful transfer of power and the swearing in of a new president and vice president. Remarkably, these two observances have coincided only once before, in 1997, and they will not coincide again until 2053. Yeah. In many ways, it's fitting that these holidays coincide this year. Dr. King spoke often about American democracy, understanding both its ideals and its shortcomings. While he was a sharp critic of America's failure to fulfill its promises of equality for all, he held a steadfast belief in democracy's potential to achieve justice. Dr. King urged Americans to strive toward realizing democratic principles and famously quoted the 19th century Unitarian minister Theodore Parker, saying, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Optimistically, he envisioned a future where justice would roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, echoing the prophetic words of Amos from the 8th century BCE. Dr. King's honest acknowledgement of our country's shortcomings and his vision for positive momentum framed American democracy as a work in progress, a nation with noble ideals requiring constant struggle and vigilance to achieve. His life and legacy remain a testament to his belief in democracy's transformative power when its principles are applied equitably. While we cannot actually know what Dr. King might have thought about the coincidence of these two observances this year, his youngest daughter, Bernice King, offered a helpful perspective. In a recent interview, she remarked, quote, "I'm glad that if it was going to happen, it happened on the King holiday, because Dr. King is still speaking to us. We cannot retreat or recoil. We have to commit ourselves to continuing the mission of protecting freedom, justice, and democracy in the spirit of my father. I know a lot of people are angry right now, but we can't let that rot in us. As my father said, let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred," end quote. Though Dr. King was both clear-eyed and optimistic about the potential and future of American democracy, many Americans today say that they feel less hopeful. A Georgetown University poll last year found that 81% of voters believe democracy is threatened. Both Republicans and Democrats see the opposing party's actions as harmful to democratic principles. The Economist's Democracy Index recently rated the U.S. as a flawed democracy, citing concerns about the functioning of government, political culture, and challenges to voting rights amidst ongoing polarization and the influence of money in politics. To put this into perspective, other countries with a similar rating include Chile, the Czech Republic, India, Israel, Italy, Malta, and Malaysia, among others. Polarization, of course, remains a significant challenge. While many Americans agree that democracy is at a critical juncture, they disagree on what constitutes a threat. Democrats might point to actions by the president-elect as undermining democratic norms, while Republicans often cite concerns about election integrity and media bias. Additionally, a recent Quinnipiac University poll revealed that 2/3 of respondents across the political spectrum believe American democracy is, quote, in danger of collapse. Scholars and institutions have also noted signs of democratic backsliding in the U.S., pointing to the erosion of norms, the weakening of checks and balances, challenges to the rule of law, and declining public trust in democratic processes. While it's unlikely that our democracy is in imminent danger of complete collapse, in light of these concerns and perceptions about the health of our democracy, an essential question arises. How did we get here, and how do we improve? Last year, James Davison Hunter's book, Democracy and Solidarity, on the Cultural Roots of America's Political Crisis, sought to answer this very question. By exploring the cultural and social underpinnings of our current political climate, Hunter's work invites us to consider ways to bridge divides and strengthen our democratic institutions. James Davison Hunter, in case you haven't heard of him, besides being an author, is also a professor of religion, culture, and social theory in the sociology department at the University of Virginia. And again, if his name doesn't sound familiar, even if you've never taken a class with him or read any of his books, you would still be familiar with his work because Hunter is the person who invented the term culture war. He popularized this term in his 1991 book, Culture Wars: The Struggle to Define America. In that 1991 book, Hunter argued that American political and social conflicts are not merely about policy differences, but reflect a fundamental clash between two opposing worldviews, which he labeled the orthodox point of view and the progressive point of view. The orthodox worldview emphasizes a commitment to transcendent, unchanging moral truths, often rooted in religious traditions and revelations. And the progressive worldview, on the other hand, values individual autonomy, moral contextualism, and the idea that moral truths evolve with cultural and social changes. Hunter's thesis was that these cultural battles between these two viewpoints are fundamentally about what kind of moral authority should shape society and its institutions. These culture wars represented a realignment of American political and cultural life, with people increasingly organizing themselves around their cultural values rather than traditional political or economic interests. That polarization, he argued, had significant implications for the cohesion and future of American democracy. Of course, looking back from the vantage point of 2025, Hunter was absolutely right. Going a step further, in his newest book, Democracy and Solidarity, Hunter examined the roots of our democracy and how the seeds of those orthodox and progressive viewpoints were evident from the very beginning, though the tension was more creative back then and less hostile than it is now. Hunter notes that American culture emerged from the 18th century tension between Enlightenment ideals on the one hand and traditional religious faith on the other hand. Founded during the Enlightenment, our nation embraced reason, democratic deliberation, and neutral institutions like courts and elections to ensure fairness and to resolve social differences. At the same time, Americans also believed that our country had a covenant with God and viewed the Bible and religious traditions as the foundations for moral values and justice. As the decades passed, religious faith fueled movements like abolitionism, the civil rights movement, and the sanctuary movement, as well as shaped national debates on issues like prohibition and reproductive rights, which were often far more intensely debated here than they were in other countries. Hunter went on to explain that each succeeding American generation navigates the tension between Enlightenment liberty and religious moral authority in its own way. In the 20th century, for example, the philosopher and educational reformer John Dewey championed Enlightenment ideals, advocating for reason, individual dignity, human rights, and education as the foundation for morality. However, his contemporary, the Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, who you may well know as the author of the Serenity Prayer, he criticized Dewey's approach as overly optimistic, arguing that it underestimated human sinfulness and the limits of science and secularism in addressing life's deepest and most ultimate questions. Niebuhr emphasized the deeper challenge of religious ideals like forgiveness over rational virtues like tolerance. For much of U.S. history, Americans balanced their Enlightenment-inspired secular ideals with their biblical and religious insights, and this was best exemplified by Martin Luther King Jr., who successfully bridged Christian metaphysics with democratic and Enlightenment principles. Nevertheless, Hunter notes that this balance ended shortly after King's death. From the 1960s onward, America became less religious, and faith was relegated to the private sphere. Public life grew increasingly secular, especially among the well-educated. By the beginning of this new century, our secular society had not been able to come to a consensus on any widely accepted cohesive moral order, leaving Americans with fragmented values and a lack of shared foundations, except those which are driven by personal feelings and personal intuitions. In this environment, Americans not only disagreed with one another, but also struggled to perceive the same reality, with ideals like living your own truth and fake news and a post-truth society becoming widespread. Hunter describes this as evidence of cultural exhaustion, rising nihilism, and a loss of shared assumptions about what constitutes a good society, which unfortunately erodes common political ground. Hunter noted too that into this void emerged identity politics, creating a moral narrative of us versus them. While this provided a sense of belonging and purpose, it unfortunately also deepened divisions. While in the past, political progressives, for example, tended to unite around economic justice and making the capitalist system more fair and just, these days, some critique progressive politics as being too centered around prioritizing the recognition and inclusion of a diverse array of identity groups. For the orthodox and conservatives, identity politics looks like politicians promoting a story of educated elites oppressing rural, non-college educated Christians, and a certain candidate alone has all the answers and is their retribution. That story resonates with a lot of people, 77,284,118 to be exact. Hunter argues that in this environment where values are not shared and where religious faith has been replaced by identity politics, that the authoritarian impulse becomes impossible to restrain. And for that reason, authoritarian candidates are no longer seen as abnormal. When social solidarity fails, authoritarianism seeks to impose a unified vision through state power. Summarizing Hunter's work and wondering about the implications of his theories on culture wars and democracy, the contemporary American writer and cultural commentator David Brooks shared some comments which might surprise you only because, in his opinion, Brooks thinks that congregations like ours can be part of the solution to creating more solidarity in our society. He wrote, quote, "The core question in Hunter's book is, can you have an Enlightenment political system atop a post-Enlightenment culture? I'd say the answer to that question is, over the long term, no. The task then is to build a new cultural consensus that is democratic, but also morally coherent. My guess, and it is only a guess, is that this work of cultural repair will be done by religious progressives, by a new generation of leaders who will build a modern social gospel around love of neighbor and hospitality for the marginalized. But the work of building that culture will take decades. Until then, we as a democracy are on thin ice, end quote. Those of us gathered here this morning, did you know that by being here, you were part of the solution to increasing solidarity and thereby strengthening our common life and our democracy? Sometimes it can be hard to describe what it is that we do here, or why we gather here week in and week out. Many people who share our values like equity, interdependence, justice, generosity, pluralism, and transformation, many people who share these values with us do so in isolation from the comfort and privacy of their homes. But when we gather here, whether in person or online, we are building the spirit of community, and we are a place that proclaims the message of a modern social gospel that teaches love of neighbor and hospitality for the marginalized. A modern social gospel that reminds us that whatever our color, our sex, our age, our political affiliation, our sexual orientation, or our faith, it does not matter. Because as our reading today reminds us, when we join together as a faith community, our aloneness is lessened and our solidarity is increased. We teach those things here, and we get to practice those things here. Being a Unitarian Universalist, being a broad-minded person of faith, can be the path that shows to others that one can absolutely embrace Enlightenment insights into both religion and political science, while also having a religious and ethical core. Maybe this is the reason that Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter to his friend in 1822 that, "I trust that there is not a young man now living in the U.S. who will not die a Unitarian." Perhaps Jefferson sensed even back then that a faith like ours could successfully synthesize Enlightenment values and a sense of a more transcendent truth that we can come to know. And somehow that synthesis could be the type of faith that would hold a modern democracy like ours together. One day, in the future, perhaps King's vision of a democracy where justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream will actually come true. Until then, we religious progressives have our mission set before us.
As the chalice is being extinguished, please join me in saying our chalice extinguishing words based on CUC's covenant. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not our promise to each other, to act with grace, to hold each other in love, to serve this community and our world. This promise of the heart serves as a reminder of how we live together. May it bring joy to our collective lives. Please join me in singing our closing hymn, as you are able, number 113.
Wonderful. Our closing words are from the 12th chapter of the Epistle to the Romans. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds.